I agreed to be her fake boyfriend. Then she kissed me in front of everyone. I found out I was dating my best friend 40 minutes before her sister's wedding, standing in a hotel parking lot in Savannah, holding two garment bags and a corsage I didn't remember buying. That's not a metaphor. That's just what happened. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 31. I restore old furniture for a living. And up until that Saturday afternoon, I had exactly one rule about my friendship with Ivy Bennett. Never let it become anything that could be lost. We'd known each other 12 years. College roommates, friends, then just friends, then the kind of friends who show up at each other's apartments at 2 a.m. without texting first because some doors don't need knocking. She called me Nate. I called her Bennett because her last name amused me and she pretended it didn't. We had survived breakups, 2 funerals, 1 disastrous road trip through Tennessee, and 4 years of her family asking me, at every single holiday, when I was finally going to make an honest woman out of her. We always laughed it off. That Saturday, we stopped laughing. Here's how it started. Ivy's older sister Cassie was getting married to a man named Bradford Ellis III, which tells you almost everything you need to know about the guest list. Ivy had been dreading this wedding for 8 months, not because she didn't love her sister, but because of one specific detail. Her ex-fiancé, a man named Julian Wren, had somehow ended up on the guest list too, on account of being Bradford's college roommate, and he was bringing his new girlfriend. Ivy and Julian had been engaged for a year and a half before he called it off 3 weeks before their own wedding, citing, and I quote, cold feet about forever. He then got engaged to someone else 4 months later. Ivy had spent a year rebuilding herself out of that wreckage, and now she was supposed to walk into a ballroom and watch him hold another woman's hand while wearing the exact expression of a man who'd made the right call. She told me all of this over coffee 2 days before the wedding, staring into her mug like it owed her answers. I can't go alone, she said. My mother will spend the whole reception asking why I'm still single, my Aunt Denise will try to set me up with a dentist again, and Julian will get to watch me be pathetic in real time. You're not pathetic, I said. I know that intellectually, she said. Try telling that to the part of me that still remembers picking out invitations with that man. I reached across the table and did the thing I always did, which was put my hand over hers without thinking about it too hard. Then don't go alone, I said. Who am I supposed to bring, Nate? I don't have a boyfriend. I have a very nice therapist and a plant I've kept alive for 6 weeks. I don't know what made me say it. Maybe it was the coffee. Maybe it was 12 years of watching her armor herself against people who didn't deserve the effort. Bring me, I said. She looked up. As what? As your date. As my friend. As whatever gets Julian to choke on his shrimp cocktail. That got a laugh out of her, small and surprised, like she hadn't expected to laugh that day. You'd really do that? I fix furniture for a living, Bennett. My social calendar is wide open. She studied me for a long moment, the kind of look she usually reserved for antique tables she was deciding whether to buy. If we're doing this, she said slowly, we're doing it right. Not just showing up together. We tell people we're dating. Actually dating. Otherwise, my mother will smell the lie in about 4 seconds. Your mother could smell a lie from orbit, I agreed. So we're agreed? We're agreed, I said, and shook her hand like we were closing on a house, which in hindsight was a deeply strange thing to do, but it felt right at the time. 12 years of friendship, and neither of us blinked at the absurdity of it. That should have told me something. It didn't. Not yet. We built the story in her kitchen that night, sitting on opposite counters with a bag of pretzels between us like we were prepping for a heist instead of a wedding. How long have we been together? She said, more statement than question, already reaching for a notepad because Ivy Bennett does not enter a situation without a plan. For months, I said. Too long. Your mother will ask why she hasn't met me as your boyfriend yet. She's met you 100 times as my friend. Right. So we say 2 months. New enough that the timeline makes sense, old enough that it isn't suspicious. Fine. 2 months. Where'd we start? I thought about it. The 4th of July thing. Your work party. I picked you up because your car was in the shop. She tilted her head. That's real. That actually happened. I know. Best lies have real bones. You've thought about this. I fix furniture, Bennett. I know structural integrity when I see it. She threw a pretzel at me, which I caught in my mouth, which she found more annoying than impressive, which is the exact energy that had defined our friendship for over a decade. First kiss, she said, pen hovering. The kitchen got quieter than it should have for such a simple question. We don't need a first kiss story, I said. My Aunt Denise will ask. She asks everyone. She once asked the caterer at my cousin's baptism. Fine. We'll say it was private. That'll make her worse. I looked at Ivy over the pretzel bag. She had her hair pulled back the way she did when she was thinking hard, a pin behind one ear, even though she was holding a different pin in her hand, which was a very Ivy kind of chaos. Your porch, I said, after the July thing. You forgot your key. I walked you up. You were annoyed I laughed at you for locking yourself out again. I'm never annoyed. You are extremely annoyed right now, historically speaking. Keep going. You said something about how I always show up right when you need someone. I said something back. And then I stopped. She looked up. And then she said, quieter now. The safe answer was to make a joke. I didn't reach for it fast enough. And then I kissed you, I said, because I'd wanted to for longer than I was willing to admit. The kitchen went very still. It was supposed to be a script. A fake memory built out of nothing, the same way we'd built the rest of the night, one convenient detail at a time. Except Ivy's pen had stopped moving, and something in my chest had gone loud in a way I didn't have a name for yet. That's good, she said finally, not quite meeting my eyes. Convincing. It's a real skill, I said, and reached for another pretzel like my hands needed somewhere to be. The morning of the wedding, Ivy called me in a mild panic about logistics, which was fair, because Southern weddings run on a level of choreography that would embarrass a military operation. I picked her up at 11. She came down the porch steps in a dress the color of dark honey, and I want to be clear that I had seen Ivy Bennett get dressed up before, for work galas and other people's weddings, and one memorable Halloween where she went as a very convincing Amelia Earhart. This was different. I don't know how to explain it except to say that something in my chest did a full structural collapse, the kind you can't unnotice once you've noticed it. You're staring, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. You look like you're about to give a deposition, I said, which was not what I meant to say, but was easier than the truth. Good. That's the energy I'm going for. Confident. Unbothered. A woman who is thriving. Are you thriving? I will be, the moment we get through that door holding hands and my mother's face does the thing. The thing? You'll see the thing. She was right. We saw the thing. Diane Bennett, mother of the bride, mother of Ivy, keeper of family secrets and distributor of unsolicited advice, took one look at our joined hands at the ballroom entrance, and her entire face rearranged itself into an expression of such profound relief that I nearly felt guilty. Ivy, she said, hugging her daughter, then turning that same intensity on me. Nathan, it's about time. Good to see you too, Mrs. Bennett. You've been dating my daughter for 2 months, and I'm hearing about it from a phone call 3 days ago. We wanted to be sure before we said anything, Ivy said smoothly, which was a better lie than anything we'd rehearsed. Diane's eyes went suspiciously bright. Well, I'm sure now. Look at the two of you. Over her shoulder, I caught sight of Aunt Denise beelining toward us with the focused hunger of a woman who had waited a long time for new gossip, and I understood, with sudden and total clarity, that this was going to be a very long reception. We made it through cocktail hour mostly intact. Denise asked 17 questions in the span of 4 minutes, most of which Ivy fielded with the practiced calm of a woman who plans corporate events for a living and has therefore developed a professional immunity to chaos. I answered the ones aimed at me with a mixture of truth and improvisation that felt, disturbingly, less like lying and more like describing something that already existed. Somewhere around the salad course, I noticed Julian. He was 3 tables over, tall, expensively barbered, the kind of handsome that photographs better than it performs in person. Beside him sat a woman in emerald green who laughed at everything he said a half second too early, the way people do when they're trying to prove something to a room. Ivy noticed him at the exact same moment I did. I felt her hand tighten in mine under the table, and without thinking about it, I laced my fingers through hers properly, thumb resting over her knuckles, the way you'd anchor something that was trying to drift. "You okay?" I murmured. "I'm fine," she said, in the specific tone of voice that meant the opposite. "We can leave whenever you want. No explanation required." She looked at me, something shifting behind her eyes. "I know," she said. "That's the thing. I actually believe you'd do that." "I would. I know." She didn't let go of my hand for the rest of dinner. Julian found his way over during the toasts, because of course he did, drifting past our table with the studied casualness of a man who had planned the drift in advance. "Ivy Bennett," he said, like her name was a clever thing he'd remembered. "It's been a while." "Julian," she said, even composed. "Congratulations to Brad. You two look happy." Her eyes flicked briefly, deliberately, to the woman in emerald green, and something in Julian's smile tightened just slightly at the edges. "And you," he said, gaze sliding to me with the assessing quality of a man doing math he didn't like the answer to. "I don't think we've met." "Nathan Cole," I said, extending a hand. "Ivy's boyfriend." The word came out easy, easier than it should have, given that 4 days ago it hadn't existed. Julian shook my hand with a grip that was trying to communicate something it had no right to communicate. "Boyfriend," he repeated. "That's new." "Not that new," Ivy said. "Just new to you, since you haven't exactly kept up." There was an edge in her voice I hadn't heard in a long time, not since the worst weeks after the engagement ended. Julian's smile didn't waver, but something behind it did. "I always liked that about you," he said. "You never let anything soften you." "I let plenty of things soften me," Ivy said. "I just stopped letting you be one of them." The table went quiet in that specific way a table goes quiet when everyone is pretending not to be listening while listening extremely hard. Julian recovered his smile, made some comment about catching up later, and drifted off toward the bar with the retreat of a man who'd expected an easier win. Ivy exhaled slowly, and I felt the tension leave her shoulders in stages. "You okay?" I asked again. "Better than okay," she said, and there was something new in her voice, something almost like surprise at her own strength. I didn't think I'd be able to say that to him. Not without falling apart. "You didn't fall apart. You dismantled him politely and moved on to dessert." That got the Real laugh out of her, the one that crinkled her whole face, the one I'd been chasing all night without admitting that's what I was doing. The toasts went long, the way wedding toasts do, full of childhood stories and inside jokes that only half the room understood. Ivy leaned her head against my shoulder at some point during the best man's speech, an easy, unthinking gesture, the kind of thing friends do. Except it didn't feel like something friends do. It felt like something that had been waiting a long time for permission. I put my arm along the back of her chair, not quite touching, and she settled into the space like it had been built for her. Diane watched us from 2 tables away with an expression that made me deeply uncomfortable, the specific look of a woman already planning a second wedding in her head. I try not to think about that. I tried, and mostly failed, not to think about a lot of things that night. Then came the part nobody had scripted, which is usually how the important parts of a story go. After dinner, the DJ called the bride and groom to the floor for their first dance, and then, in the way of these events, opened it up for everyone else. Ivy grabbed my hand before I could think of an excuse. "I don't dance," I said. "You fix 100-year-old furniture with your hands. You can manage a slow song. That's an unrelated skill set." "Nathan." Just my name, no argument attached, and somehow that was more persuasive than anything else she could have said. We ended up on the floor under a canopy of string lights, her hand in mine, my other hand at the small of her back, moving in the careful, swaying non-dance of 2 people who were technically dancing but mostly just standing close together and pretending it's choreography. "This is nice," she said quietly. "The wedding or the fake dating?" "Both." "Neither." "I don't know." She looked up at me, and the string lights were doing something unfair to her face, catching gold in her eyes, and I had the distinct, dangerous thought that I had run out of ways to convince myself this was pretend. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "Always. I was terrified to come tonight. Not because of Julian. Because I thought I'd spend the whole night performing happiness and going home exhausted from it. That's what the last 2 years of family events have felt like. Performing. And now? Now I don't feel like I'm performing." Her voice had gone soft, private, the kind of voice meant for exactly one person to hear. "I feel like I'm actually having a good time. With you. And I don't know what to do with that, because you're supposed to be fake, Nate, and none of this feels fake." My chest did something complicated. "Ivy." "I know," she said quickly. "I know. This is a lot. Forget I said." I stopped her with my hand, gentle, at her jaw, tilting her face up just slightly. "Don't take it back," I said. "I've been trying not to say the same thing for about 4 days. Possibly longer. Possibly since the invitations went out and I realized how badly I wanted an excuse to stand next to you all night." Her breath caught, audible even over the music. "How much longer? Don't make me do math in front of your entire extended family." "Nate." "Fine. Longer than 4 days. Longer than this wedding. I think I've been half in love with my best friend for embarrassingly close to a year, and I've been very committed to not examining that fact too closely." The music kept playing. The room kept spinning around us. Aunts and cousins, and a flower girl doing cartwheels somewhere near the cake table, but none of it touched the small, charged space between us. "I need you to be sure," Ivy said, "because if this is just the wedding talking, if this is just adrenaline and Julian and pretty lights, I need you to say so now, because I can survive losing a fake boyfriend, but I don't know if I can survive losing you." "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I've spent 12 years not going anywhere. This isn't the wedding talking. This is 12 years finally getting a word in." She searched my face for a long moment, the way she searched everything before she trusted it completely. Whatever she found there must have been enough, because she rose up on her toes, right there on the dance floor, under the string lights, in front of her entire family, in front of Julian and his emerald green girlfriend, and Aunt Denise and Diane Bennett with her knowing eyes, and she kissed me. It wasn't a stage kiss. It wasn't the kind of performance we'd planned for 4 days, calibrated for an audience, designed to sell a story. It was real in a way that made the room actually go quiet, the way rooms do when something true happens in public by accident. I heard, distantly, someone gasp. I heard, even more distantly, what might have been Aunt Denise saying finally to no one in particular. None of it mattered. All that mattered was Ivy Bennett's hand fisted gently in my shirt, and the taste of champagne, and the 12 years of almost finally resolving into something solid. When she pulled back, she was flushed, breathless, and grinning in a way I had genuinely never seen on her before, not once in over a decade of friendship. "Well," she said, "that happened." "That happened," I agreed. "In front of everyone. In front of everyone. My mother is definitely crying." I looked over her shoulder. Diane Bennett was, in fact, crying, dabbing at her eyes with a cocktail napkin, while Aunt Denise patted her arm and said something that involved the phrase "I told you so" at a volume clearly meant to be overheard. Across the room, Julian had gone very still, his date's laughter faltering as she registered his expression. I didn't feel bad about that. I felt, for the first time and longer than I wanted to admit, entirely uncomplicated. "For the record," Ivy said, still close enough that I could feel her breath, "that wasn't in the script." "No," I said. "It really wasn't." "Are you upset about the improvisation?" "Bennett, I have never been less upset about anything in my life." For a second neither of us moved, and the whole ballroom seemed to hang there with us, string lights and clinking glasses and the murmur of 100 conversations that had, apparently, all just paused at once. Then the DJ, either oblivious or brilliantly opportunistic, slid the song straight into something slower, and the moment stopped being a single frozen instant and became, instead, the beginning of the rest of the night. People are staring, I said quietly. Let them, Ivy said. I've spent 2 years being stared at for the wrong reasons at these things. I'd like a turn being stared at for a good one. This is a genuinely excellent reason. I thought so. She tucked herself against my chest, and I could feel her heartbeat going fast, could feel my own doing the same thing. Two people finally catching up to a truth that had been sitting patiently in the room for over a decade, waiting for someone to notice it out loud. I have a confession, she said, muffled slightly against my jacket. Bigger than the one you just made in front of your entire extended family? Smaller, but embarrassing in a different way. Go on. I picked this dress because I knew you liked the color on me. You said it once, months ago, completely in passing, some comment about a scarf I wore that one Thanksgiving. I remembered it. I built an entire outfit around a compliment you don't even remember giving. Something in my chest went soft and unsteady. I remember the scarf, I said.
Rust orange. You wore it with the gray coat. I told you it made you look like Autumn had personally endorsed you, and you called me a lunatic and changed the subject. She lifted her head, staring at me. You remember that. Bennett, I remember every single thing you've ever worn that I liked, which is an alarming amount of data to be carrying around for a person I supposedly saw only as a friend. That's either extremely romantic or a little concerning. Both can be true, I said, echoing something she'd said to me years earlier about a French pastry cookbook of all things. A memory that had nothing to do with tonight and everything to do with how long two people can quietly collect each other without admitting what they're doing. She laughed, and it landed against my chest like something warm settling into place. We didn't leave the dance floor for the rest of the song. Somewhere around the second chorus, Cassie herself, the actual bride, materialized beside us in her wedding dress, practically vibrating with delight. Did you two seriously just have your whole relationship reveal at my wedding? She demanded, though she was laughing too hard to sound truly outraged. In our defense, Ivy said, the relationship reveal was somewhat accidental. Somewhat, I echoed. You've been in love with each other since college, Cassie said. Everyone knew. Mom knew. I knew. The only two people who apparently didn't know were the two of you. We had a system, I said. The system was denial, Cassie said. It worked great until tonight. It worked terribly, Cassie said, for approximately a decade, and I'm thrilled it finally collapsed at my reception, because now I get to tell the story forever. She hugged us both, smelling like champagne and gardenias, and disappeared back into the crowd of well-wishers, leaving Ivy and me standing there in the wreckage of a plan that had never really stood a chance. Diane found us next, mascara-streaked and radiant. I have so many questions, she said. You have exactly 0 questions, Ivy said, because you've clearly known this was coming for longer than we have. A mother knows, Diane said serenely. I've been watching you two dance around each other since you were 20. I was starting to think I'd need to intervene. Please tell me you weren't planning to intervene, I said. I had a Christmas dinner seating chart prepared, Diane said, entirely unbothered by our horror. It's a beautiful thing watching a plan finally not be necessary. She kissed both our cheeks and drifted off toward the cake table. Already, I was fairly sure, drafting the story she would tell at every family gathering for the next 20 years. Julian approached exactly once more that night, toward the end of the reception, when the crowd had thinned and the DJ had moved into the slower, sleepier songs that signal an event winding down. He found me alone at the bar while Ivy was in the bathroom, fixing lipstick that had, admittedly, been thoroughly kissed off. So that was quite a show, he said, and there was an edge under the casual tone that told me exactly how much the evening had cost his ego. It wasn't a show, I said. That's the thing you're going to have to sit with. He studied me for a moment, the particular scrutiny of a man measuring himself against a replacement he didn't want to admit was better. "She seems happy," he said finally, and there was something almost human in it, a flicker of honesty breaking through the performance. "She is," I said. "I hope you know what you have," he said. "I do," I said. "I've known for about 12 years. I just needed a wedding and a very persistent aunt to admit it out loud." He almost smiled at that, the closest thing to grace I'd get from him that night, and then he wandered back toward his table, toward his girlfriend, toward whatever version of his life he'd chosen instead of the one that would have included Ivy Bennett, and I found I genuinely did not care what that life looked like. Ivy came back from the bathroom to find me still at the bar, and she slid onto the stool beside me with the easy familiarity of a woman settling into a life that had just gotten simpler. "Julian talked to you?" she asked. "Briefly. Did he say something insufferable?" "A little. Mostly he said he hoped I knew what I had. And I told him I've known for 12 years. I just needed the right push." She smiled, soft and a little disbelieving, like she was still catching up to the night. 12 years is a long time to wait. I wasn't waiting exactly. I was just refusing to look directly at it. "Different thing. Semantics. Structural integrity," I said. "Best lies have real bones. Best truths too, apparently." She laughed, leaned into my shoulder, and for a long moment we just sat there at the edge of her sister's wedding, watching the last of the guests sway to a slow song, feeling something settle into place that had been unsteady for over a decade. We drove home a little after midnight, the windows cracked, the radio low, Ivy's shoes off and her feet up on the dashboard in a way that would have annoyed me on any other night and delighted me on this one. "So," she said, somewhere around the county line, "what happens now? We've established the fake relationship is, in fact, extremely real. What's the plan?" "I don't think we need a plan for this one, Bennett. I always have a plan. I know. It's possibly my favorite thing about you. But some things you don't script. You just show up for them. That's very unlike you. You're the guy who color codes his tool drawers." "I contain multitudes," I said, and she laughed the real laugh again, the one I now understood I had been quietly, hopelessly collecting for years without admitting what I was doing. We didn't rush anything after that. There was no dramatic leap from fake dating to moving in together, no whirlwind engagement within the month, because that's not who either of us was, and frankly, we'd both had enough of whirlwinds to last a lifetime. What we did instead was simpler and, I think, better. We kept being exactly who we'd always been to each other, except now we didn't pretend the wanting wasn't there. We went to dinner without an audience to perform for. We argued about which one of us had better taste in furniture, a debate that will likely never resolve, given that I restore antiques for a living, and she once tried to convince me that a beanbag chair counted as a design statement. We told her family the truth, eventually, the real timeline, the actual first kiss, which happened not on a porch in July but under string lights at her sister's wedding in front of 100 witnesses and one deeply smug aunt. Denise, for the record, still tells that story at every family gathering, usually with the phrase "I always said those two would figure it out" attached, despite having zero actual evidence she'd ever said any such thing prior to that night. 6 months later, I asked Ivy to move into the house I'd been slowly renovating on weekends, the one with the porch that didn't yet have a working light, the one I'd started fixing up without fully admitting to myself who I was fixing it up for. She said yes before I finished the sentence, which was, she told me later, the least surprising decision she'd made all year. A year after that, we went back to that same hotel ballroom in Savannah for a cousin's wedding, and when the DJ played a slow song, Ivy pulled me onto the floor without being asked, the way she always did now, no hesitation, no performance, just the easy certainty of two people who'd stopped pretending a long time ago. "You know," she said, resting her head against my chest, "this all started because I panicked about seeing my ex at a wedding. I remember," I said, "and somehow ended up actually falling in love with my best friend on a dance floor. Best decision that panic ever led to." She looked up at me, String lights doing that same unfair thing to her eyes they'd done a year earlier. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't kissed you that night? If we'd just gone home as fake boyfriend and girlfriend and quietly ended the arrangement? I thought about it genuinely the way I thought about anything that mattered to her. I think eventually one of us would have cracked, I said. Probably me. I was already halfway to telling you the truth before dessert. You were very obvious, for the record. You kept looking at me like I'd personally invented string lights. You had that night. As far as I was concerned. She laughed, kissed me again, not for anyone's benefit this time, just because she wanted to, and I understood, standing there on that same dance floor a year later, that some of the best things in life start as a favor for a friend and end up rewriting the whole story of who you thought you were supposed to love. Sometimes you agree to be someone's fake boyfriend for one night, and by the end of it, you're not pretending anymore. You're just finally telling the truth, in front of everyone, under a canopy of lights you didn't plan for and couldn't have scripted if you'd tried. What would you have done if your best friend asked you to be her fake boyfriend for one night, and it turned into the realest thing that ever happened to you? Have you ever had a fake situation turn into something completely real? Tell me your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more stories just like it, and I will see you in the next one.